So if you didn't have food or water or electricity, could you and your family survive for at least a month? Well, hi friends, I'm Brian Cosby. This is Provide and Protect, and today we're talking about how to start prepping. Maybe you've looked ahead and you're thinking about your own family and you want to be a provider and protector. And you're thinking maybe there could be a scenario, whether it's a natural disaster like a hurricane or a tornado or a flood, or you're thinking maybe an EMP attack, a nuclear attack even. Maybe it's something like an economic collapse, grid down situation. And you just want to make sure that you and your family can survive. And so what I want to do is give you my top 25 items to have on hand so that you and your family and maybe even others in your community can survive. But before we get into my top 25 list today, if you've not already done so, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate you and your support with that. Let's jump right in. So I made some notes here, and what I'm going to do is drop a lot of stuff down below. So check out the description, and also just a word, if there are things that I'm missing from this list, these are more categories than individual things. But if I missed a category that should be in this list, please comment on that. So the first item on my list is shelter. What I mean by that is that you have your home and your property secure, whether that is a gate or fencing or guard dogs or a security system, deadbolt system, all of those kinds of things. Just make sure that your own property, your own home is safe and secure. The second item is water. And I don't know if you're on a well or if you're connected to the water system in whatever municipality or city that you're in. But if there's some issue with water, we've seen that in our own country in different places like in Michigan and other places, Jackson, Mississippi more recently, where people could not get fresh drinkable water. And they had to figure out another way, whether it's boiling the water to have a water filtration system. And I'll drop links below for a couple of systems that I recommend. Some kind of purification system that you can filter water that's drinkable and usable. You also need to have some kind of way to store that water as well. Maybe you can't just have it directly line in from a creek or a river. You may not have that option. So you might have some other way to have water stored as well. So the third item is food. So I'm going to read my list here, whether it's canned food, freeze-dried food, and I really recommend Augustin Farms, and they are a sponsor of our channel. They have products and food that can last up to 25 years, and they're an amazing company, and there's a lot of them out there, so Mountain House and others as well. But I would at least have 6 months of supply of food for you and your family, so that if something happened, there's a run on groceries, maybe the trucks can't get to the grocery store, something like that, that you can still have food and you're safe. Like, really what it is a peace of mind. Like, I know that right now that if something happened and I couldn't go to the store and just buy food for some reason, that I could still survive. I could feed my children. I could feed my family and maybe even some extended family members and friends, that kind of thing. So having freeze-dried food is important. I'm going to add to this a few things to think about. Vinegar. There's multiple uses for vinegar. Whether it's white vinegar, that's probably the best. But for actually consumption, apple cider vinegar, spices, canning supplies, oil, coffee, maybe even spirits. I mean, spirits would be a good bartering option if you don't drink. But all those things are really helpful things to have on hand. Again, food, vinegar, spices, canning supplies, oil, because you got to cook. Coffee, some people just enjoy coffee, and I do. So having coffee and maybe spirits. So that's the third item is food. The fourth item I recommend is medication or first aid. You're going to need to have a good supply of first aid equipment and medication. And you can't always just assume that this is always going to be available to you. And I recommend My Medic as a company or Medic Box are both sponsors of our channel. And the idea is not just to have a first aid kit that's for your Band-Aids, like scrapes and bumps and bruises, but also a first aid kit that you can actually save a life. If someone's bleeding out and you have chest seals, you've got tourniquets, you've got those kinds of things to actually save a life. And I'll drop some links for all this stuff down below, but also medication. Maybe some of you have prescription medication. You need to have extra of that. Can I include in here eyewear or extra contacts as well, vitamins, that kind of thing also. So this whole area of supply of medication or first aid is a really important thing to have on hand. So number 5 is hygiene. You want to have soap and toothpaste and dental floss and all that kind of stuff. Do you only have the tube of toothpaste that's in your bathroom right now? Or do you have maybe a couple extra tubes somewhere? Do you have a couple extra bars of soap? A basic thing, but like the toilet paper in the pandemic, there can be a run on anything, I've learned. And so you want to have a good supply of just your basic hygiene. So number 6 is a heat source. Like in the middle of the winter, it's cold fall or cold winter day or early spring, something like that. You want to make sure that you and your family can stay warm. And whether that's having a wood stove, a fireplace, other kinds of heaters, if you don't have electricity, do you have another way to heat and have warmth? So you need to think about this. And this is why we'll get to this later, but having a generator, something else as well, might be really helpful in this area. But you need to think about having a source of heat for you and your family. So number 7 is communications. If you don't have ability to access your cell phone, or if the towers are down, this happened recently in Hurricane Helene, not too far from us, and the generators that even backed up the cell towers, they were gone. So there was no cell phone. So if you don't have a cell phone, how do you communicate? And I would highly recommend either having at least some kind of walkie-talkies. I recommend these DeWalt walkie-talkies. I'll drop them below. Or a ham radio, CB radio. Of course, you have to have a license with ham radio. But you can get your GMRS license and operate other kinds of two-way radios. So that is really, really helpful. And during an emergency, there is a whole network and grid of ham radio operators out there that are serving people. You don't have to have a license to listen. You do have a license to transmit, unless it is a true emergency life and death situation or something that's affecting your own property. So you can transmit via ham radio, but it takes a license. So know that. But still, the communications, you got to think about that, especially with family members, other parts of the way. If you want to access a repeater and access communications to people in other parts of the country, you can do that. But you need to check up on the codes on that from the FCC. But still, to think about communications, having a satellite phone, a GPS. So communications is a huge, huge issue. And we've seen that multiple times in our own nation when there's been a disaster, some kind of catastrophe, natural disaster, and people have not been able to communicate. So communications, a big one. All right, so number 8 might be controversial, but guns and ammo. So our whole channel is about providing and protecting, and I believe, even as a Christian, that we have the right to keep and bear arms. And so having a various supply of ammunition and also firearms, and I recommend probably for handgun ammo 9mm because it's the most common. For a rifle, either 223 or 5.56, one of those two. A shotgun, 12 gauge is the way to go. Now, you can branch out in all kinds of other ammunition, but those are the most popular of those 3 types of firearms. But if you want to protect your home and your family, if there's an invader, if someone's trying to, as it were, attack your castle, your property, you want to defend yourself or your family or others, this is just keeping the 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill. The positive aspect of that is preserving life. You want to preserve life of yourself and your family and those that are close to you. So if you want to have supplies of everything, food, water, medical supplies, all this other stuff I'm listing here, and you want to be able to protect your family from maybe threats from marauders or other kinds of things, then maybe having firearms and ammunition is a good way to go. All right, so number 9 is tools. This is probably one that we don't think about very often, but tools. And I've got a list here again that I'm just going to list for you, some ideas that I thought about. Hammers, nails, screws, screwdrivers, wrenches, a chainsaw, maybe a couple of them. Actually, on a chainsaw, I have some videos on these, but you really need to have a good working chainsaw. Even if you're trying to get out and there's trees across your road, you need to get out. Like, it's going to take some work. So chainsaw, shovel, rake, crowbar, safety equipment, like eyes and ears, like safety glasses and earmuffs, that kind of thing. So having a good supply of tools. I think people think about tools like hammers and nails and that, but they don't, or hammers and screwdrivers, but they don't think about the actual nails and screws. So actually having the hardware that goes along with that. All right, so number 10 is blades. So this is having a good knife, whether it's a folding knife, It is a fixed blade knife. You've got an axe. You've got a saw. You've got a machete. You've got a multi-tool. All those kinds of things, and ways to keep all of that sharpened. So again, I've got tons of videos on knives and sharpening systems, but you really need to think about. I mean, I would actually argue that a knife is the most popular and important tool in the world. You could go to any tribe anywhere in the world, Africa, Asia, South, anywhere in the world, and you're going to find a blade of some sort. And it is the thing that you use most often during the day, even in the kitchen, is having a knife. So you need to have at least some knives, some kind of way to process wood, process game, just basic tasks. That's very, very important. You know, on the show Alone, I think it's Discovery Channel maybe, everybody had at least one or two, maybe three different kinds of blades. Having an axe, saw is also really, really important. So certainly blades, that's going to make the list today. All right, so number 11 is cordage. So you need to have paracord, rope, whether it's towing straps, chain, some kind of cordage, because you're always going to be tying up stuff, pulling stuff. I feel like I use paracord mainly for me most every day for some kind of purpose. And with paracord, which I love, 550 paracord is the mil spec stuff. You don't want to get that other stuff that's kind of fluffy on the inside. You want to get the stuff with the strands on the inside, because you can use that for so many purposes. And so having a good supply of cordage is going to be really important. So number 12 is fire starting equipment. Whether that's lighters or matches or ferro rods, you need to have some way to start a fire. And if you have a Zippo even, you need to make sure you have enough extra fuel for that as well. My favorite company with this is called Blackbeard Fire. They're a sponsor of our channel, and they have these amazing kits, and I'll drop a link for that down below. But you need to have some way to start a fire. If you need to get warm, if you need to cook, at the end of the day, I mean, we all need having some kind of way to cook food and stay warm. And it seems like if you're a provider or protector, you need to have that. It's just one of those most basic essential needs to have. All right, so number 13 is navigation supplies. So having a map, not just on your phone, but a paper map, like paper maps of your area, your location, your region. Having a rangefinder might be helpful, compass for sure. Maybe even having GPS, a way to access, where you are from a GPS or something that you can charge some other, like by a small solar panel or something. But some kind of way to know where you are, if you need to bug out, if you need to get somewhere, and you're wanting to know the terrain, you want to know the direction, you want to know the degrees where you're traveling, all of those kinds of things, or how far something is. Navigation supplies is going to make the list here today as well. So number 14 is garden seeds. You want to be able to plant a garden, and I recommend the heirloom variety because you can grow your food and then you can actually harvest the seeds from those plants and use them for future plantings, and that's a really good thing. So there are some emergency kind of prepper seed packs. We've actually used them to plant our whole garden for many years. We've got a big garden, so we plant our garden, we grow our own food. And so that's an important thing to have and think about, that maybe there's a short-term burst where you have to have your freeze-dried food or your canned food, but what happens after that? What if the crisis or the emergency lasts longer than a few months? Then what do? You need to start thinking about long-term. How do you provide for your family? And I think one major way to do that is having seeds. So number 15 is having an alternate source of energy. So whether that is generators, we have a home generator. We've got several of these kind of portable generators. One of them is gasoline, propane. We even have one that's just purely electric that I'll have a review on coming up. But having generators or solar panels, and these are also really helpful. So another form of electricity might be good, because if your electricity goes out, well, then what do you do? And with that, number 16 is fuel. And I'm talking about gasoline for your equipment, your vehicles, your mower, all that kind of stuff. Maybe diesel if you've got heavier equipment or a truck that takes diesel. Propane, that's always good for heating and that kind of thing. I want to go ahead and include in this also firewood. So firewood is a source of fuel for heat. So we have a wood stove, for example, and I consider firewood a source of fuel for heating our home. And even today, we are heating our home, and usually all winter long with firewood. And so having a variety of sources of fuel, that could also be a good bartering thing for other people, in case, cash doesn't mean anything, and it hardly does anymore anyway. So if you want to barter something, fuel is going to be one of the really, really, really important things to have, because a lot of people are going to go to the gas station if there's an emergency or crisis. We've seen this many times. There's a run on gasoline, and either they jack up the prices or they just limit the amount that you can take. So having several cans, I recommend the Wavian cans. I hate some of those plastic ones that just spill everywhere. So just get some good cans and get a good supply. I would at least have like 30, 40 gallons of whatever fuel that you use or need. All right, so number 17 is vehicle emergency or maintenance kits. So I've got my list here. I'm just gonna read this to you. So in your vehicle, having a tire pump, a tire repair kit, a tire pressure gauge, jumper cables, oil changes, like the supplies for changing your oil, like oil filters and fuel filters, spark plugs, siphon, flares, all things that would go into a vehicle. Like in my vehicle, I've also got like communications, I've got shovels, I've got other kinds of things as well, ways to purify water on the go. So all those things would be really helpful to have for a vehicle. If you need to get out, there's also some EMP protection kits out there as well. Now, I've not tested those. I do have a video on installing one, but that might be something to consider as well. All right, so number 18 is a miscellaneous category, because I didn't know where to put it, and there's a bunch of random things that maybe you can think about, and please feel free to just pause the video on any one of these and write these down. I just kind of threw, it's like the kitchen sink, I just kind of threw everything in here. So let me just read this to you. Tarps, flashlights, extra batteries, lanterns, candles, sewing kit, trash bags, toilet paper, plastic bags, tin foil, fire extinguishers, coolers, binoculars, thermal or night vision, that might be helpful, duct tape, zip ties, WD-40, work gloves, cleaning supplies, sleeping bags, survival books, and even entertainment like cards or books or games, or even like a Frisbee or something. There may be a situation where you're like kind of bored and you're sitting at home, like, we need to do something. So that's just a miscellaneous category. All right, so number 19 is cash or other items for bartering. I know I said earlier that maybe cash isn't going to be worth much, but maybe it is. And it's good to have at least some money in your home, some stashed away secure somewhere, in case you need to access. If you can't use your credit card, what do? How do you pay for things? Gold, silver may be options as well in this, but maybe items, just useful items for bartering. Any of the things I'm mentioning here today, probably going to be useful items for bartering. So think about that ahead of time, but having cash or items for bartering. All right, so number 20 is baby supplies, if applicable. If you have a baby, make sure you have enough formula or whatever, diapers or whatever else. Cloth diapers might be better here. That's what I had when I was a baby. But whatever items that you have for babies, make sure you have enough of that. Same goes, number 21, for animals. So we have goats, we have chickens, we have dogs, we have cat, we've got all kinds of animals. And so we need to make sure that we have a supply of hay, or at least a source of hay in case something happens, and food for all those animals, and even medication for those animals. So having enough, I think sometimes we just think about ourselves and we don't think about those animals that really help us or give us encouragement, our pets and other things. So making sure you have enough animal supplies as well. So speaking of animals, but on the negative side, number 22 is pest control. So rats, rodents, even termites or bugs like hornets, wasps, all that kind of stuff. So you need to make sure that you have ways to deal with that, whether they're having some kind of traps to deal with that, or sprays or whatever, because you don't want to be in a situation where you've got a big hornet's nest hanging from below your back deck like we've had, and you don't have any way to take care of it. We've got a bee suit, so that might be something to have as well on hand in case you need to deal with some kind of pest around your home. All right, so number 23, we're getting close, is fishing or hunting supplies. So it's not just having a firearm, as I mentioned earlier, but maybe having a firearm for hunting. This would be helpful if you have a rifle like a .308 or something else. Be really good for hunting, like I mentioned already, shotgun. But also the stuff that goes along with hunting, some things you might need to consider, whether it's clothing or binoculars or other things go along with hunting, and certainly fishing. Having a fishing rod, a good fishing kit, tackle and all that kind of stuff. Those are certainly going to be things that maybe think about if you need to get food. Whether, if your garden isn't supplying the food, if you've run out of freeze-dried food, well, at some point you got to go get food somehow. And this might just be really helpful to have on hand. All right, so number 24 is footwear and clothing. So having appropriate clothing and footwear for all seasons of wherever you live. And that would include having appropriate hats and beanies, toboggans, gloves, all that kind of stuff. Having a good pair of boots. I'll have a video coming up on boots, so make sure you got at least some kind of waterproof boots that you can get out and do work in, that kind of thing. So having a variety of clothes for not only yourself, of course, but also for your family is going to be really important. All right, so the final thing is having a Bible and a journal. You're going to need to have spiritual strength through this, and you're going to need to have encouragement and hope and all of that, spiritual resilience through this, and you're going to need to be someone who is strong, not only for yourself, but for others. And I believe as a Christian that we find that in the Word of God and the scriptures of the Old and New Testaments. But also I mentioned a journal because you might want to record your thoughts and your process, making plans, all those kinds of things, but having meditation and reflection on your situation. And doing that, I think, gives great encouragement and it gives perspective. It helps you to step back from your immediate needs, your immediate pressing crisis, and see the bigger picture, and journaling helps with that. And so having a Bible and a journal, I think, has to be on the list. Well, who's been helpful for you today? And again, if there's something that I missed that should be on my list, please drop that down below. But thank you so much for joining me. And if you've not already done so, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. I do really appreciate you and your support for us, and we'll see you on the next video.